The lights in the Capitol studio were hot, but the tension between Senator John Kennedy and political commentator Candace Owens made the air feel combustible. She leaned in, eyes sharp. "You conservatives say you love the Constitution, but I've never once heard you explain what Article 1 even says," Candace fired. Kennedy didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. He sat back with that half-smirk Louisiana charm and replied slowly, "Well darlin', that depends on whether you've read it in English or just in tweets." The room stilled. One of the producers looked up from the monitor. Candace's smile twitched. "I've read it cover to cover," she said. "And I know that big government's your real addiction." Kennedy leaned forward now, voice low and deliberate. "And I know revisionist history when I hear it. What you're trying to do, Ms. Owens, is rewrite the soul of this nation in a font it never approved." She raised her eyebrows, a hint of mockery in her tone. "So I suppose you think the founders wrote it just for you?" Kennedy pulled out a worn copy of the Constitution from his coat pocket. "I think they wrote it for every American. But I don't think they meant for it to be misunderstood by commentators with selective vision." The moment hung. Candace crossed her arms. "Selective? I'm the one actually fighting for Black Americans to think for themselves. And I'm fighting for all Americans to remember what freedom really means," Kennedy replied. "It ain't just a buzzword you throw on a podcast." The silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. Waiting for someone to blink first. Candace sat still. Kennedy never broke eye contact. Candace's eyes narrowed. Her voice came quieter now, but sharper. "People like you hide behind the Constitution when it suits you, and ignore it when it threatens your power." Kennedy placed the small booklet on the table like it was loaded. "Ms. Owens, I don't hide behind anything. I stand beside this document, rain or shine. Even when it's uncomfortable, especially then." She chuckled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Cute line. But tell me, where was your Constitution when Jim Crow reigned? When civil rights leaders were beaten in the streets?" Kennedy nodded solemnly. "I grew up in the South. I saw things no kid should have seen. And you're right, the Constitution didn't always protect every American the way it should have. But that's not the Constitution's failure. That's ours." That line landed. Candace blinked. Kennedy didn't let up. "You want to know what Article 1 says? It gives you the right to challenge me right now. It gives me the right to answer back. And it gives every American the power to hold both of us accountable." She leaned in again, quieter now. "And you think quoting parchment is enough?" "I think reminding folks what's in that parchment might be the only thing holding this country together," Kennedy answered, voice like gravel and gospel. There was a long pause. Then Candace said it. "You speak like you own the truth." "I don't," Kennedy replied. "But I've sworn to protect it." From the corner, one of the interns watching the live feed whispered, "This ain't a debate, it's a reckoning." And no one in that room, left or right, dared to disagree. The cameras kept rolling. Millions were now watching online, phones buzzing, comment sections lighting up like wildfire. But Kennedy didn't blink. He shifted forward, slow, deliberate. "Ms. Owens," he said, "do you know what scares me more than corruption?" She smirked. "Enlighten me." "People who rewrite the Constitution in sound bites to win likes." Candace raised a brow. "And you don't do that?" "I read it," Kennedy said flatly. "And unlike some folks in this room, I understand the cost behind every line." Candace tilted her head. "Oh, is this the part where you lecture us on founding fathers and powdered wigs?" "No," Kennedy said, his voice steady. "This is the part where I remind you that freedom isn't a trend. And facts aren't optional." The crowd stirred. Candace sat up straighter, crossing her arms. "You say you care about facts, yet you're quiet when it's your side trampling them." Kennedy didn't flinch. "I call out lies wherever they crawl. But let me ask you something, when was the last time you quoted the Constitution, and meant it?" That one stung. She opened her mouth, but paused. Kennedy continued. "You want to debate race? Justice? Opportunity? Good. Let's do it. But if you step into that ring swinging history like a weapon, be ready for it to swing back. The moderator tried to cut in, too late. Kennedy wasn't done. This document, he said, holding the Constitution up once more, wasn't built to serve a party. It was built to serve the people. All of them. Even the ones who don't have a podcast. The room went silent. Candace tapped her mic. You're good, Senator. Real good. Kennedy leaned back. I don't do this to be good. I do this to remind America what it forgot. Candace leaned back in her chair now, smile gone, calculation replacing charisma. Let's test your memory then, Senator. If the Constitution is so sacred, why do you let your party bend it every election cycle? Kennedy's fingers drummed once on the table. Just once. Candace, let me be clear, he said, voice lowering like a storm cloud. I don't serve a party. I serve the people. And I don't bend the Constitution, not for power, not for pressure, and not for polls. She scoffed. Easy to say. Harder to prove. Kennedy nodded. All right. Let's prove it. He opened the Constitution booklet in front of him, not for show, but like a priest opening scripture. 14th Amendment. Equal protection under the law. I've stood on that clause in rooms where I was the only voice saying no to injustice. When was the last time you risked your following for something inconvenient but right? The room tensed. Cameras pushed closer. Candace blinked, twice. She tried to pivot. What about the First Amendment? You quote it until someone says something you don't like. Kennedy raised an eyebrow. Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from response. You talk reckless, expect a rebuttal. That's how democracy works. Candace leaned forward, eyes sharp. So I'm reckless now? Kennedy didn't flinch. I'm saying if you shout fire in a crowded theater, don't act surprised when people look for the smoke. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even the moderator had gone silent, watching this unfold like a courtroom drama. Then Candace delivered her final shot. You're hiding behind that booklet again. Kennedy smiled faintly, his southern drawl curling like heat off asphalt. Ma'am, I don't hide behind anything, he said. I hold it up, so you can't pretend it ain't there. The crowd barely breathed. Candace, for the first time that night, seemed to recalibrate. Her voice dropped an octave, cooler now, more strategic. You love waving that Constitution, Senator. But when it was written, people like me weren't even human in it. You ever think about that? A wave of tension crashed through the room. Even Kennedy paused. He set the booklet down, gently. I think about it every day, he said, eyes locked on hers. I think about the hypocrisy. The cruelty. The holes in our founding promise. But I also think about how we patch them, with courage, not cynicism. Candace crossed her arms. Patchwork doesn't heal systemic rot. Kennedy leaned forward. No, he said. But burning down the foundation doesn't rebuild anything either. You don't fix history by erasing it. You fix it by owning it. Candace laughed dryly. Spoken like a man who never had to fight for his name in a room full of people who never saw him. Kennedy nodded, slow, measured. You're right. I didn't fight your fight. But don't assume I've never fought. His tone sharpened, eyes darkening with memory. I've stood against my own party when they crossed lines. I've taken heat for saying unpopular truths. And I've been called every name under the sun, for quoting law over loyalty. The room was dead silent. Candace tilted her head. And what's your truth now? Kennedy raised the Constitution once more, but this time, he didn't need to read it. My truth is simple, he said. The Constitution was flawed at birth. But it breathes when we make it better. And I won't sit quiet while anyone, left or right, strangles it to score points. Candace stared at him. She had questions. But in that moment, She had no words. Candace took a slow breath. She was regrouping now, not to surrender, but to strike more precisely. So, tell me this, Senator, she said, folding her hands. If you're such a guardian of the Constitution, where were you when your party pushed voter ID laws that disproportionately hit black and brown communities? You stand for equality, or just convenient clauses? Kennedy didn't blink. I stood exactly where I've always stood, he replied. On the side of law, not loopholes. Candace's eyebrow arched. Voter ID isn't a loophole. It's suppression dressed up in a suit. He leaned in, calm and direct. And reckless claims dressed up as justice don't make them true. She smirked. So it's reckless to point out racial disparities? Kennedy's voice tightened, not with anger, but precision. No. It's reckless to weaponize them without offering a single solution. The room went tense again. Kennedy pressed forward. You talk about systemic injustice, good. So do I. But if you want real change, you can't just tweet outrage and sell merch. You have to sit in rooms that don't clap for you. You have to lose before you win. Candace narrowed her eyes. Kennedy continued, unshaken. You want to talk voter suppression? Let's talk access. Let's talk gerrymandering. Let's talk election interference from abroad and at home. But don't act like the Constitution is your enemy when it's the very tool that allows us to fight back. She was quiet now, measured. The moderator finally interjected, would either of you like to respond in closing? Candace didn't speak. Kennedy did. I don't carry this Constitution because it's perfect, he said, holding it high one last time. I carry it because it reminds me, we are the ones who shape its meaning. Or destroy it. He set it down. And for a moment, even Candace Owens was out of words. After the debate, the room didn't disperse immediately. People lingered, not because of unresolved points, but because something rare had happened. Two forces collided. One remained standing. Backstage, a hot mic caught Candace muttering, he's slick. I'll give him that. Kennedy, still seated, removed his glasses, glanced at his notes, then looked up as a staffer approached. Senator, she said, you broke the internet. He smiled wryly. Wasn't trying to. But you did, she insisted. Hashtag constitutional KO is trending. Even people who disagree with you, respected it. Kennedy leaned back, thoughtful. Respect doesn't win elections. Truth does. Meanwhile, Candace was already on social media. Her followers surged with fire emojis and rally cries. But under the heat, there were comments she hadn't expected. He made you pause. That says something. You needed more than slogans tonight. She saw them. She didn't respond. Hours later, cable news panels were already split-screening the exchange. Conservative hosts tried to reframe it. Progressives called it a masterclass in constitutional clarity. One commentator said, Kennedy didn't attack her, he outlasted her. That's harder. In a podcast the next day, Kennedy was asked, what were you trying to prove to Candace Owens? He paused. Nothing, he said plainly. I wasn't trying to prove anything to her. I was speaking to the people who still believe words matter. He tapped his worn copy of the Constitution once more. And I was reminding them, they still have power. The morning after, the footage played on every major network. Clips of Kennedy calmly holding the Constitution, juxtaposed with Candace's impassioned retorts, became instant political theater. But beyond the noise, something deeper stirred. In classrooms, students analyzed the debate. On campuses, law professors quoted Kennedy's line, "You have to sit in rooms that don't clap for you." A Georgetown student posted, "I came here for politics. Kennedy gave us civics." But inside Candace's circle, tensions brewed. You could have buried him, one advisor hissed. With what? She snapped back. A meme? Another murmured, he outclassed you. It's not about being louder, it's about sounding right. Candace didn't reply. But something flickered in her eyes, not defeat, but calculation. That evening, Kennedy stood alone in his office, reviewing the flood of emails. Veterans. Teachers. Even high school students. Most said the same thing, thank you for standing for something real. A knock on the door. His aide peeked in. Senator? CNN wants you on Anderson Cooper tonight. And Fox wants a statement before Hannity. He waved her off. Not tonight. She hesitated. Why? He looked up, voice calm but firm. Because we're not done yet. This wasn't about one night. It's about every night someone feels silenced by noise. That same hour, Candace posted a video. You want calm lectures and faded papers? Fine. But I want results. I want America back. It got millions of views. But under it, one comment rose to the top. He didn't need to shout to shake the ground. That's how truth works. 3 days later, a surprise event was announced, a town hall featuring both Senator John Kennedy and Candace Owens. No moderators. No scripts. Just two voices, face to face again. The venue? Tulane University, neutral ground, but packed with tension. Before stepping on stage, Kennedy adjusted his cufflinks and tucked the worn Constitution into his jacket pocket. A staffer whispered, "You sure you want to go back in there?" He nodded. Truth doesn't flinch. Candace arrived in crimson, heels sharp, gaze sharper. Her team flanked her, phones out, press ready. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Once seated across from Kennedy, the lights dimmed. The first question came from a student. Do you believe the other truly wants what's best for America? Silence. Then Kennedy leaned forward. I believe she believes she does. But believing isn't always knowing. Candace's response was swift. And I believe he hides behind the Constitution to avoid admitting this country needs change. Kennedy didn't blink. The Constitution is change. That's why it begins with "we the people," not "me the powerful." The crowd stirred. She crossed her arms. And yet, power protects itself. Kennedy's voice lowered. Only if people let it. But when you show up with facts, not noise, power listens. Another question came. What would you change about each other? Candace smirked. I'd make him fire his speechwriter. Kennedy chuckled. I'd have her read the Federalist Papers. Slowly. The crowd roared. It wasn't about who yelled loudest anymore. It was about who made people think hardest. And in that room, thinking had returned. The lights dimmed as the final audience question echoed. What's one truth neither of you can deny? Candace inhaled sharply. That America is broken, she said. But not beyond repair. Kennedy didn't look at her, he looked at the crowd. That too many folks gave up listening. And too many others gave up speaking clearly. A quiet settled. For the first time that evening, the tone shifted. Less combat. More consequence. Candace leaned in, her voice more honest than fire this time. We disagree on methods, but I think even you know the system protects people who already have power. Kennedy didn't flinch. And I think you know that the Constitution was meant to limit those people, not just frame them. The moderator stepped in. Final thoughts? Candace stood. I came here ready to fight. But I'm leaving reminded that fighting smart matters more than fighting loud. Then, Kennedy rose, slowly. He pulled out his pocket Constitution again, unfolded it. This little book doesn't need a defense. But the people do. Always. He turned to Candace. We may never agree on everything, Miss Owens. But as long as you keep showing up, I'll keep answering. Line by line. There was no applause. Just reflection. Later that night, the clip of Kennedy quoting from Article 1, Section 9 began trending. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. It was meant to remind everyone, no one's above the truth. Candace didn't tweet after the event. But the next morning, she posted a photo, Kennedy holding the Constitution, her looking on. Caption: Still reading. And so, in a world that often rewards noise over nuance, two voices clashed not just with volume, but with vision. Candace Owens brought fire. John Kennedy brought foundation. And in the space between confrontation and constitution, something rare happened. America watched, and thought. Not everyone agreed. Not everyone had to. But for once, a conversation echoed louder than a headline. Because when the fight isn't just about winning, but about what we're actually fighting for, that's when democracy breathes again. And Kennedy? He didn't just bring the Constitution. He reminded the country why it still matters.